Hello and good morning. It is Thursday, March the 31st. It is time for PLAR History and Geography here at WASA in Sulico, located on Front Street. We are at the end of week number 7 of this term, term 2A. Yes, there are only 2 more weeks left. Only 2 more weeks left in this term before this term is all done, before we begin the fun once again, all over again from the beginning. Uh, Couple things before we get started. As you may have guessed, all the Canadian hockey teams are now officially eliminated from the postseason. This is the first time since, I believe, since 1970 that no Canadian hockey teams are in the postseason or in the playoffs, so they can probably begin the golf season shortly. In other Canadian sports news, the Toronto Raptors won their 50th game last night, first time in franchise history, and the Toronto Blue Jays start the season opener this weekend on Sunday. Also, we want to express our condolences and thoughts out to the community of Candragum, where they had a tragedy yesterday. So we want to send our thoughts and prayers to them, so that they are always in our thoughts and that we are with them during these tough times. Like always, feel free to call in the Wasa studio if you want to listen, participate, and engage as we continue working through our geography lessons. Again, to get in touch with me, your teacher, Jonathan, feel free to give me a call during my office hours or just ask for Jonathan. Send me an email if you have an email account. If you don't, I know you do have social media. I know you have Facebook. So feel free to add me as a friend on Facebook at jhowasta. I will always accept your friend requests. And if you're unable to join us today on this Thursday sunny day in Sulico, again, all our lessons are recorded and are posted online either on the archive page or on the YouTube channel. Okay? One more thing before we get started. Next week, yes, next week number 8, couple of things are happening. It is that time of it's that time again in that term where teachers and staff here at WASA are beginning to do the community visit up north into our First Nations community. So next week, week number 8, I am traveling to the community of Wagamau or Round Lake. I'm only there for one night. I'm supposed to be there for 2 nights, but there's some changes. So I'm there on the 5th till the 6th, which is I'm leaving next week, flying out Tuesday morning, and I'll be back sometime on Wednesday. With that being said, next week, week number 8, there will be a class time swap or switch or changes. So next week on Monday, this coming Monday, April 4th, please jot this down on your calendar. I will send an email out to all the DC to remind your students. But next week, this coming Monday, will be PLAR History and Geography at 10 a.m. I am taking Andrea's slot, who are switching, which means that PLAR English, PLAR Anglais English with Andrea will be during my time slot next week on Tuesday, April 5th at 10 a.m. local time. Okay, so please make note of that. Again, if you're a PLAR English student and a PLAR History and Geography student, please make note of that. Again, I'll send an email out to all the DC to remind them to remind their students. Hopefully, Andrea had reminded her students yesterday during class. But again, I am traveling to Wagamau, Round Lake next week on Tuesday. I'll be back on Wednesday. Short one-night trip. Again, this coming Monday, April 4th, will be PLAR History and Geography at 10 a.m. And on Tuesday, April 5th, will be PLAR English at 10 a.m. with Andrea. Okay? This is no longer needed as I am back in time to my Thursday class. That will no longer be canceled, and there will no longer be a makeup class on Friday. Thursday will be the same as schedule. Nothing changes there. Okay, just Monday and Tuesday swapping with Andrea. Again, if you're confused or have any questions in regards to that, just let me know or let Andrea know and we'll sort that out. Okay, I'll remind the class again at the end of today's class about these changes due to my community visit travel up north to Wagamama or Round Lake, which I'm super excited for since I've never been to that community. Other than that, let's get started in terms of today's lesson. So we are still continuing in the geography portion, geography half. We're still on lesson number 5 because lesson 5 is a pretty big one. So let's get to today's learning goals. We covered a bit of it last class where we did maybe 1 or 2 slides in terms of this lesson. But again, we're still looking at physical geography. That is our focus. Okay, that will not change. So again, we'll be defining, going over the term functional region. Oh, sorry. A functional region. We'll be also looking at the difference between weather and climate and defining the difference and what it means in terms of weather and climate. We'll be talking about trees, different types of trees. And we'll be looking at different types of ecozones here in Canada. Again, lots of more definitions, lots of more terminologies, something that the class will need to be able to define and explain in your assignment. And at the end of today's class, we'll be going over assignment number 13. We're almost at the end. So let's begin. So we did go over what is a functional region last class, but we're gonna go over that definition again, just to refresh our memory, and it will also help you in terms of completing your assignments. Okay. So a functional region is defined as it can be often developed around something around a center or a focal point. Okay, it's anything that stands out, something that makes us remember, a center or a focal point. Again, I gave the example of national parks, or for example, one Banff National Parks and Quebec Falls near just outside of Thunder Bay. So any national parks or any landmarks, historical sites can be defined as a functional region, something that attracts people, something that people want to come and see and visit. Okay, so I gave an example of a national park last class. Something that's really interesting about national parks here in Canada. I do have a little map of all national parks in Canada. So anything that's highlighted in green or has a green dot or beside it are national parks here in Canada. Some are much bigger than others, but we do have 39 national parks here in Canada. Tons all in different provinces, even in territories, 39 national parks, which accounts for about, I think, 10% of the land here in Canada. So 10% of Canada is some kind of under some kind of protection, whether it's provincial park or national parks. I think 10% of Canada land is under some kind of protection. Earlier this year, our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that all national parks and potential historical sites will be free next year in 2017. With that being said, since it's going to be free, All national parks will be free. You don't have to pay a fee or admission to get in to visit. So all national parks and potential historical sites will be free starting next year in 2017, which was made. That announcement was made earlier this year by our federal government, Justin Trudeau. He made that announcement because it marks and celebrates Canada's 150th anniversary of Canada's Confederation, pretty much, or birthday, Canada's birthday of 150 years. So that's why he made that announcement. National parks, again, example of a functional region. National parks are amongst Canada and the world's natural jewels. They represent the power of Canada's natural environment and compelling force, which has shaped not only the geography of this country here in Canada, but also the course of its history and experience of the people who live and travel there. National parks are established to protect and present outstanding representative examples of natural landscape and natural phenomena here in Canada. Like I said, there are 39 national parks. Okay, that's not even counting provincial parks that we have here. A provincial park that we have here that's near Silco is Ojibwe Park, which is pretty much down the road, about a 20-minute or so drive. So what makes national parks of Canada stand out? Because it has breathtaking sceneries. So if you go back one slide, you see that picture of Banff, Lake Louise, even Quebec Falls, almost like Niagara Falls. Again, a center point or focal point, also known as a functional region, because it has breathtaking sceneries which attracts people, where people want to come from all over the world to come and see and visit. National parks tell stories where there's human history, traditional Aboriginal activities, early exploration, European settlements, and even modern day history. Again, because these areas are under protection, for example, national parks, by the government, the federal government, we need to protect it. We need to protect it, conserve it, so that we have it for the future. Like I said, almost about 10% of Canada's land is under some kind of form of protection, where we need to maintain the ecological integrity of these areas, so that we have it in terms of, so that we have a healthy ecosystem, diverse biodiversity, structure, features, so that we have it now and in the future. Okay? So that's a little bit about national parks, where I plugged it in terms of looking at functional regions. Again, class, you will be needing to explain what is a functional region. Again, simply often around a center point or focal point. Example, any parks, national parks, for example, that stands out. So we're gonna move on to the next slide. Moving along, and we're gonna look at weather. The difference between weather and climate. Again, you turn on the news, you watch the news in the morning, or you flip on the weather channel before you walk out the door, and you want to see what's the weather like. So right now I'm going to look at what is the difference between weather and climate. So meteorologists studies the atmosphere. They use information to analyze the forecast of the weather, which can be extremely helpful for drivers if you're commuting to work every single day, travelers if you're traveling to a different country, cities, or northern community. That can be extremely helpful as well. And just knowing the simple weather helps everyday people in terms of their day-to-day basis and activities. Meteorologists can predict weather in terms of over a period, a day, or even tell you the 7-day forecast. Very, very unique. For weather, we're going to define what is weather right now, and then we'll define climate. means two complete different things. So, first, weather is the day-to-day change in the atmosphere conditions of the air in a particular place on a particular date. In other words, what is it like outside? It can include temperature, whether it's sunny, cloudy, snowing, raining, windy. That is weather. What it is like pretty much outside in the air, in the atmosphere on a particular date. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but on a particular date, which could be today. Again, it could be tomorrow, could be yesterday, but on a particular date. Okay, on a particular time. So if I look outside my window right now in the Wausau studio, the sun's out there. We got nice blue skies. As I was walking over to the studio, there was a light breeze. There was snow on the ground, but it's slowly melting. But yes, spring is coming. We have some nice warm weather coming. So that is what the weather is like today. Into further details, we can pull up the weather network right here, and we can pretend to be meteorologists, and we can tell you what the weather's like today. So based on the weather network, here in Sulagao, it is currently 0 degrees outside. Feels like -3. Whether that is accurate or not, that's for you to tell. There's some slight wind coming from the east, but currently right now it is 0 degrees, feeling like -3. So you probably should be wearing some form of a light jacket out there. Like I mentioned, meteorologists can also predict weather in terms of a 7-day forecast. So looking at the rest of the week in terms of weather, even though we're pretty much into spring, here in Sulagao, temperatures are slightly going to dip as we progress throughout the week and into the weekend. I am no expert into meteorologists, but reading this, supposed to be in the negatives again, low single digits negative. Sun's still coming out there, more feeling like -10 over evenings and nights. So, and perhaps some snow. It's predicting early next week. Okay, don't want to ruin anyone's plans, but that could change. But it is predicting some snow at the early next week. But again, temperatures are supposed to be slowly dipping into those low single negative digits throughout the day. So this is just an example of what is weather on a day-to-day basis in a particular time, in a particular date, and that particular place is that we're looking at here in Sulagao. Okay, if you look at a different country or different city, it could be completely different. But in terms of this particular place and dates, this is the weather for today. In terms of this afternoon, it's supposed to go up to +5. It's supposed to snow later this evening and tonight. Again, whether that is accurate or not, predicting the weather can be tricky at times as well. So that's weather. Hopefully that clears things up. Again, weather is a day-to-day change in an atmospheric condition. Again, it changes. Okay, meteorologists study in terms of charts and data that they collect based on their interpretation. In other words, they can change. Okay, conditions of the air in a particular place on a particular date. What is it's like outside? Something that we can share and talk about in terms of common people. Hey, what is the weather like outside today? And such. So now looking at climate. Something slightly different. Slightly different. Climate is a long-term, long-range, long-term pattern of weather. Climate often happens over decades or even centuries. Okay, think long-term, not just a particular time or date. Think long-term in terms of climate. Climate is the average weather of a particular area. It does not describe any particular event or date. Okay, the climate can be long-term. Okay, even though we are at the end of March, heading into April here in Sulagao, spring is upon us, we can simply get a dumping of 30 plus centimeters of snow next week. Okay, it's not supposed to, but it can happen. Okay, in terms of a long range pattern. Okay, so another example for climate here in Sligo in northwestern Ontario. The climate is often very cool, often very cold, especially here in the winter time. That's how we describe the climate of northwestern Ontario. Not hot and humid during the summertime, but just nice, warm, but extremely cold. That's the average pattern over decades and centuries. That does not change. Okay? So to further explain it, I got some phrases that we can group into short-term conditions and long-term conditions. So anything that's short-term can be defined into weather. Okay, weather, a short-term pattern, and long-term is grouped into climate. Okay, climate. So if I was to say it is 13 degrees today, I'm referring to weather. Because I'm talking about today in a particular place in a particular time. But if I was to say the Sahara Desert is hot and dry, the Sahara Desert out in Africa is hot and dry, we are referring to climate. Because we know that climates are often hot and dry. It can rain on a particular date, but in terms of a long range term pattern, the climate of the Sahara Desert is hot and dry. If I was to say there is a 30% chance of rain today or tomorrow, okay, I'm referring to weather. Weather. Again, short term on a particular date on a particular time. And finally, if I was to say polar bears thrives in the Arctic, we're referring to climate. Polar bears do thrive in the Arctic where it's cold. They like cold temperature with snow. So that is referring to climate because the Arctic is often cold and cool all year around. Okay? So that's the difference between weather and climate. You do need to know what is weather and what is climate and the difference between the two. Simply how you define the difference between the two. Short-term and long-term conditions. Okay, weather, we know what weather is, we defined it, but weather is simply short-term condition. Again, we know what climate is, and climate is simply long-term condition. Those are the difference. Okay, weather can change in minutes, in hours, day-to-day basis. Climate usually is consistent. It has the same temperature for a long period of time based on its patterns. Okay? Weather and climate. All right. Getting into some fun materials right now, give or take. We are going to be talking about trees. Trees. Yes, trees. But more specifically, types of trees. Trees are unique because we see it absolutely every day. It's everywhere. Not so much above the Arctic line as you get further north to the North Pole, as they can't really grow that much in terms of cold weather. But we do have trees here in Sligo. Trees are unique because they give us oxygen, they give us protection in terms of noise, they give us homes for wildlife in terms of animals. But we are going to focus in terms of types of trees with two categories of trees. One, we're going to talk about coniferous trees, and two, we're going to be talking about deciduous trees. And how these two types of trees are different but simply easy to remember. Okay? So again, as I look out my window at the Wassa studio, I do see coniferous trees, and I do see deciduous trees. But what are which? How do we classify? How do we tell which tree is which? Well, let's define them. Let's define it. Coniferous tree. Again, you will see a question about this in your assignment, asking about what is and what are coniferous trees. Coniferous trees or coniferous forests simply are trees that have cones. Okay, cone, not an ice cream cone, but a pine cone, for example, a pine cone. Okay, so if you see a tree that has a cone, boom, it is a coniferous tree. Or if you see a needle-like leaves, such as this pine tree that has these needles on its trees, these spikes, boom, again, it is a coniferous tree. Okay, they produce these seeds, which turns into cones. Coniferous trees and forests often grow in cold climate as they can survive and handle the harsh cold weather. Some example of a coniferous trees are one, a cedar tree, a pine tree, or a spruce tree. So if you know your trees based on its names, those are examples of a coniferous tree: cedar, pine, and spruce. Other information about coniferous trees are these trees often stay green, the color green, all year long. Hence why a coniferous tree or forest are also known as evergreen. Or evergreen trees, evergreen forests. Okay, again, they fall under the category of a coniferous trees. Again, they survive in warm summer, cool weather. Again, long, cold, harsh winters, they survive as well. Again, these trees are often found in northern hemisphere, so especially in our northern communities up north, you will often see lots and lots of coniferous trees. Again, they have this needle-like leaves that have a heavy wax-alving coat, which protects water loss and freezing weather. Hence why they have these cones and these needles. Other examples are cypress, cedars, redwood, and these trees can grow pretty tall. Okay, not sure how tall this tree is, but it can often grow up to 20 meters in height, give or take. Okay, so they can be pretty tall, or even more. Okay, so these trees can be really tall. So again, what the class needs to remember are some characteristics of a coniferous trees. Simply, they have produce cones and they have needles as their leaves. Okay, and they like to be in cold climate. Okay, simple. Keep it short. Keep it simple. Again, some characteristics of a coniferous trees: cones and needle-like leaves. Next, tree number 2. We're going to talk about a deciduous tree. A deciduous tree. A deciduous tree simply has leaves. Okay, an actual leaf or a maple leaf or just a simple leaf that comes in all different shapes and sizes. These deciduous forests and trees, they have leaves, but they often fall in the fall season or in autumn. Okay, so if you see a tree that has no leaves right now, boom, it is a deciduous tree. It has leaves that grows, but often fall in the autumn season. They do grow in hot, warm climates, not so much in the colder climate area. They do need good fertile soil to grow. However, often there are only a few remaining deciduous tree left due to clear cutting, due to deforestation, due to the booming and increasing urban development. Cities and towns and areas need to grow As a result, these deciduous trees are often sacrificed so that we can have more land, so that we can expand our day-to-day basis, which is kind of unfortunate. Some examples of our deciduous trees are a maple tree, an oak tree, and a birch tree. Again, if you know your type of trees, you can classify it whether it's deciduous or deciduous. Okay, but again, keep it simple. What we need to remember, what the difference between the two types of trees are: deciduous trees have leaves that fall in the fall season. Again, deciduous trees are often found in tropical and subtropical region. They do need a lot of good rainfall so that they can grow big and strong. These trees can be found in all four seasons, whether it's spring, summer, winter, or fall. Again, these leaves on a deciduous tree change its color from a healthy green to this red, brown, orange, yellowish color that eventually falls to the ground. Okay, great for animal to adapt to climate. They use the trees for hibernation and camouflage. Again, like I mentioned, loss of land due to farming, urban towns and cities, clear cutting, and deforestation. As a result, it also impacts animals as well. Animals' homes are lost when these trees are lost. So we're not just impacting the land as we're losing trees that provides healthy oxygen for us. We need to take into account animals that lose their homes, their habitats, a source of protection as well. Hence why we need to go back to the knowledge of our biosphere reserve, where we need to protect and conserve as much trees as possible, whether it's deciduous. If we're cutting down a tree, we simply need to replant it. Even though a tree is significant, as this provides us with different resources, such as this piece of paper that I'm holding in my hand right now. Okay, so again, always pros and cons when we're chopping down trees. Okay, so trees in parks, for example, are nature. They all also represent culture, which I'll get into in a second as well. How we treat nature is an expression of our society. Okay, whether we plant it, grow it, chop it down, is how we treat nature as an expression of our society. Government actions and policies often reflect people's thoughts as well. Okay, so let's get into a bit of culture. Culture and First Nation Indigenous content. It's been a while since we plugged these in. So, on my screen, I have a little illustration of a First Nation lifelong learning model. And that lifelong learning model of our First Nations, Indigenous, Aboriginal culture is often a tree. Okay, a tree. The First Nation historic lifelong learning model represents a link between First Nations lifelong learning and community well-being. It can be used as a framework for measuring success in lifelong learning. For First Nations people, the purpose of learning is to honor and protect the earth, to ensure the long-term sustainability of life. So, if you look closely at this illustration, we do have a tree. It's a picture of a tree. And in this tree, the roots represents the domain and source of knowledge, whether it is language, First Nations language, their tradition and ceremonies, natural world views, ancestors, family, self, community, clan, nations, and other nations. Those are the roots. The domain and source of knowledge. As the tree grows and have these branches are kind of like the life learning and how they start from a child, from an infant to a teen, to an adolescent, and to an elder. So it could be spiritual, cultural knowledge as a branch, social knowledge, economic, and political views as well. A collective well-being represent the branch of the trees and the leaves. You can also see a circle around this tree from this illustration, which represents, again, also more knowledge, but also represents teaching, teachers, parents, elders, mentors, counselors, okay, as well. So this is kind of like the motto of our First Nation, lifelong learning, how learning doesn't end. We're all lifelong learners, where we learn from a teen, uh, from an infant to a teen, from an adult, even to an elder. We spread those knowledge and those wisdom. That kind of represents a tree, where you start from the roots, understanding where you come from, your background, your community, your culture, and then as you grow, you expand into these leaves and trees and these branches based on our spiritual knowledge, social, economic, and political knowledge and well-being as well. My next image is also a tree, but it represents a different group of indigenous population. It represents Métis, okay? Métis, okay? Again, when we're talking about indigenous content or indigenous population, there are not just one, or everyone's the same. Each group has its own different culture and knowledge and understanding. However, it also represents a tree as well, okay? Kind of different, but similar as well in terms of Métis. So it has the roots, okay, again, which is our knowledge and values, where it has our healthcare, balance and harmony, spiritual, political movement, economic environments, physical environment, and social environment. As the tree grows, um, the main body or the trunk of the tree again represents a source of knowledge. Okay, and the leaves and the branches represent self, the people, the land, the tradition, and the language. Okay, slightly different, but similar as well. So we're talking about types of trees, deciduous and deciduous. Trees are important to Aboriginal First Nation culture as it represents lifelong learning as we always continue to grow. All right, enough about trees, and we're going to move on to our last learning goal for today. Last learning goal for today, and we are going to talk about ecozones. Okay, ecozones. What are ecozones? How do we define ecozones? Well, similar to a region, but ecozones have one major characteristics in common. Okay, we're talking about a land, an area that has one major common characteristic in common. It could be vegetation, it could be the population, and it could be numerous other factors as well. But when we're talking about an ecozone, we're talking about an area that has one main major characteristic in common. Okay. But it may also have more than one defining factors, okay, where it could be population and vegetation, natural resources combined, but it has a main characteristic in common. Ecozones often and are a combination of natural features and human activities in a particular place. So we're combining natural features such as the land and where it comes from, and human activities in one particular area. Okay, an ecozone, a combination of natural features and human activities in a particular area. Here in Canada, we have so many, numerous amount of ecozones. Not just one, not just two, not just three, but we have 15 land-based ecozones here in Canada, and we have five marine-based ecozones. So altogether, combining the land-based and the marine-based, we have 20 different variety of ecozones here in Canada, which makes sense because Canada is a pretty huge, massive country, extended from coast to coast. So we do have lots of different ecozones. Again, an ecozone is an area that combines natural features of the land and human activities in a particular place or an area that has one main common characteristics in common. Something that they all share, something that they all have together. So right here, class, is a map of Canada that outlines and represents all the different ecozones that we have here in Canada. On the left-hand side, we have all the terrestrial, which is the land base. Ecozones that we have here in Canada. And on the right-hand side, we have all the marine ecozones of Canada, which is bodies of water. So we got oceans, seas. Okay, so bodies of water. Okay, so again, all the different colors represent areas of different ecozones here in Canada. Again, some provinces, some territories may have more than one different ecozones. So depending on where you live in Canada or in which community you're from, it can represent different ecozones. So for example, since I'm originally from Southern Ontario, my ecozone would be a mixed wood plain. Whereas here in Northwest Ontario and here in Sulaka, we are mainly a rural shield. We have lots of forests. And as we continue up north in Northwest Ontario near Hudson Bay area, it's known as the Hudson Plains, where it has few trees, cold weather, snow all year round most of the time. Okay? So we're not going to go into details about all of the different land-based or terrestrial ecozones here in Canada, and we're definitely not going to go into all details about all the marine-based ecozones here in Canada. Okay, there are just too many. We don't have time, but we will go over some. We'll go over some. Okay, but when we're talking about ecozones in Canada, as a class, in terms of the next assignment, what we need to remember. Let's see what we got here. So what we need to remember is the ecozone's name. Okay, this will definitely come in handy in terms of the next assignment. The name of the ecozone, the location of the ecozone, in terms of where is that ecozone located, which province, for example, the climate of that ecozone, because each climate of an ecozone is different and unique. We'll talk about types of animals that lives there, because not all animals live in the same ecozone. Different animals and wildlife need different climate, food supplies and resources in order to live and sustain. And they would also need to look at human interference as well, how we impact how we as human, as individual, impact the land, whether it's from a positive standpoint or from a negative standpoint. So these are the five areas that we need to look into greater details when exploring all the ecozones of Canada. Again, we're not going to go to all details about all ecozones of Canada, but we will go over some. Okay, I will go over some. Some that are significant in terms of this particular area that we currently live on. So, one ecozone here in Canada It's known as the Boreal Shield, capital Boreal Shield, the Boreal Shield. Again, on our map, you can see that the Boreal Shield is the dark green area, and it's pretty big. Extends all the way from the east coast, Newfoundland, Labrador, and it goes all the way towards even Saskatchewan, parts of Ontario, Quebec as well. Lots. Okay, it extends from Alberta, even if we even look at it, to Newfoundland. It is Canada's largest ecozones that we have. Some characteristics of the Boreal Shield ecozone is that it has short, warm summers, cold winters, okay, lots of forests, which means there are tons of trees, whether it's spruce, pine, um, birch tree. In terms of types of animals, deer, black bear, raccoons, owls, and many, many more. Lots of fresh lakes, and from the effects of the ice age and that carves up valleys and lakes that we have here. And the Boreal Shield is also known for its transportation, fishing activities, and outdoor recreation activities as well. So again, just some characteristics about the Boreal Shield ecozone. Again, class, you'll need to know all the details. You'll need to memorize all the details of the ecozone. In your textbook, it does go over all 15 land-based and all 5 marine-based ecozones. Okay, you can refer to that when answering your assignment. But again, only pick a few. You'll need to know all of them. Okay, I don't expect the class to know all of them as well. Okay, another example, the Hudson Plains. Again, if you look at the map, Hudson Plains is this yellowish color, which is right here, which is pretty much a lot of northern Ontario that touches Hudson Bay. Okay, so the Hudson Plains ecozone are known mostly in northwestern Ontario, even parts of Manitoba and parts of Quebec. Vegetation up here are limited. Not many trees. There are some trees, but not many trees. But vegetation in terms of what grows there are often limited based on this climate. The climate in the Hudson Plains are bitter cold, similar to what we have here in Silico, but not as bad. Okay. Blueberries, tons of blueberries. I noticed that we have tons of blueberries here in Silico if we're going hunting or just walk along the trails. White spruce. In terms of animals, geese, moose, bears. Okay. I never seen a moose, so I would love to see a moose, but I never seen a moose in my lifetime. And it also has wetlands as well. Okay, there's not much human interference or activities going on here in the Hudson Plains, as the population in this particular ecozone is often very limited. Okay, limited based on its cold climate. Okay, some of the marine ecozones. One of them is the Pacific ecozone. Okay, the west coast of BC. Okay, that marine base off the coast of BC is known as the Pacific Marine. It has rich, diverse ocean community, aquatic mammals, sea otters, whales, known for its fishing, tourism, where people come and travel and visit, and water activities as well. In terms of its human interference, we as people often damage this particular ecosystem based on overfishing, pollution, and as a result, it destroys habitat, homes, and it creates destruction for them as well. So, even though this particular ecosystem is rich and diverse in terms of its aquatic life, but we also destroy it based on our everyday activities. Some areas of this marine base, or even on the East Coast, they ban fishing for a particular time as we overfish the population, again, which damage the food chain and aquatic lifestyle. So, and pollution can also damage the ecozone as well. There's also some human interference that we play. Okay, again, those are just some examples of land-based and marine-based. Again, on my slide, I got pictures and illustrations of different ecozones. Each picture tells a different story. Again, whether it has mountains, something that has in commons, lakes, rivers, different animals, a bison, whether the land is super flat. Okay, remember we're dealing with something that's common. Okay, bare rocks, trees, cliffs from the Canadian Shield, vast open land. Um, some area are warmer and cooler compared to others. Different types of trees, different types of natural resources, different vegetation that grows. Okay, especially in the period, like I said, super flat. Also farmland. You can see for miles and days. Okay, so again, ecozones, rich, diverse, different as we go across Canada. Okay, each ecozone has its own different activities, whether it's hunting, fishing, etc. Okay, tons of animals, whether they live in the same ecozones or different ecozones, it just all depends. Even looking at marine base, again, polar bears, glaciers, snow, okay, snowmobiles, okay, all common characteristics that we have in our northern communities. Whale watching, have you ever done whale watching? I haven't. Okay, so East Coast icebergs, especially in the spring area, boats, fishing, again, whether it's positive and negative, it also impacts the environment as well. Okay, so again, those are just some examples of ecozones. Again, don't need to know all of them, just know some of them. So we do just have enough time to go over questions on assignment 13. So let's go over those assignments and we'll call it a day. So geography, PLAR geography, assignment number 13 out of 23 marks. Question number 1, what is a functional region? Again, define it. Feel free to get an example. A functional region is ... First complete sentences, no changes there. Question number 2, explain what is meant between the term weather and the term climate. Okay, define each term, weather and climate, and tell me why they mean something different. Why is weather and climate different? Okay, hint, short-term and long-term conditions. 3 marks. Question 4 deals with trees. Question 3 asks, what are the characteristics of a coniferous tree? Okay, just tell me some, don't need to know, tell me all. And question 4, what are the characteristics of a deciduous tree? Same thing, tell me some, don't need to tell me all. Okay, whether it has cones, needles, leaves that falls. Okay, those are some of the characteristics I'm looking for. Question number 5, what is an ecozone? Again, a term, define it. An ecozone is, it has this, it contains this. And last question, number 6, you'll see a chart. You simply have to complete the chart. Okay, and it goes back to ecozones, name, location, the climate of that ecozone. Tell me some of the animals in that ecozone and some of the human interference in that ecozone. Some ecozones have no human interference, just simply write nothing. Okay, so for example, we went over the Burial Plains, again located in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Okay, climate. Okay, it's cold winter, warm summers. And we have type of animals. I think this chart's kind of off. Okay, list some animals as well. So class, your job is to pick any 4 ecozones that you want. Doesn't matter, any 4, whether it's all marine, all terrestrial base. Just pick 4 ecozones. Okay, any 4. It's all in your textbook. And tell me the name, location, climate, names of animals, and human interference. Okay, we're almost running out of time. So I will explain this again next class. But just a reminder, before we call it a day, next week, week number 8, I'm traveling to Wagamama, Round Lake. I'll be in the Learning Center. So feel free to come on out if you need help with any of your work. Again, Monday, April 4th, PLAR History and Geography at 10 a.m. Central Time here in Sioux Lookout. On Tuesday, April 5th, will be Andrea's PLAR English. She'll be taking my time slot. Again, we're switching time slot just for next week, Mondays and Tuesdays. Okay? So, with that being said, I'm going to end it for today, and I will see everyone on Monday. Have yourself a great weekend. Thank you.